Welcome to this video. We're going to be talking about how to utilize VMware Player to install and utilize our own Windows 10 virtual machine, either using Windows 10 Education or any version thereof that we have the ISO file. So we're going to take a look at how to do that after we've installed our VMware Player, workstation, or virtual box. So each video is going to have its own dedication. Right now we're going to dedicate to VMware Player 15.5.6. Once we open that up for the very first time, we're going to create a new virtual machine. We're going to look for our ISO file, which is in my downloads folder here. So we're going to go to downloads. We're going to click on our Windows 10 ISO version. Open that up. Windows 10 was detected. It's going to use easy install. We're going to skip the product key. It doesn't really matter. We're going to put in a username. If you enter in a password and forget your password, you will have to figure out how to install that password. So we're going to choose Windows 10 Pro because this was our Windows 10 Pro download from the uh, Windows ISO downloader. Choose Next. It will install without one, but it won't be activated. So we'll just say yes, continue. We'll leave it as a forensics VM. Notice where our save location is going to go. By default, it goes into documents, then virtual machines, and the name we chose, which was forensics VM. After which we'll hit next. The maximum disk size is set to 60. We'll split it into multiple disk files. We'll customize hardware at this point in time just to make things a little faster. Let's see, we don't need a printer, so we will remove it. Everything else will be set as is. And if we want, because it did express setup, we can adjust some things here. This is where Workstation and Player differ a little bit. Workstation gives you a lot more options through this install process. Player tries to make it a little quicker, a little more condensed. So what we've got real quick is 2 gigs of memory. Now what I have in my machine here is 32 gigs of memory. The physical memory is the ceiling here. As you look, the maximum recommended memory is 32 gigs, which my machine has 32 gigs. If I take it to 32 gigs, it's going to use up all of my memory on my physical machine to utilize it and put it forward in that virtual machine here, which can take a long time. It'll make everything slower because it's putting a lot of memory into my virtual machine, but I need the operating system, the host, to run the virtualized software and anything else that I may need throughout the course of me utilizing this in the meantime. So it's a good idea to not go all the way up, but a healthy bit of a bump. So if you've got 8 gigs, consider leaving it at 3 gigs. If you've got 16 gigs, leave it at 4. If you've got 32 gigs like me, 4 gigs will be no sweat whatsoever. Now I have an i7, I think it's a 7th gen i7. So I have a few processors to spare just to sort of speed things up. So I'm going to take my processor's core to 4 cores. Again, this is a big difference between um, uh, player and workstation. You're going to see a difference here where we can change core and virtualization of that as well. So we're going to save it at 4 cores, 4 gigs. Your laptop desktop may be different. Do not choose my options because I do not know what you have. Utilize what you know about computers and processors and RAM. As far as disk space goes, this is pretty generic stuff. If you've got the space, you can utilize the space. So after which we'll set it to 4 gigs, 4 processors. We'll close. Notice that everything has changed now. We've got 4 cores, and we'll power on this after creation. So we'll hit finish. And now we'll create the disk, create the virtual machine itself, and then load the operating system onto that virtual machine. And this does take some time, but we'll go ahead and let it go. Each of these softwares, whether it's going to be Oracle, Workstation, or Player, they're all very similar in setup. Once you get used to it, if you've done one, you can figure out how to do the rest. All right, now the virtual machine has finished creation. It will start its boot cycle. or post. That's the power on self test. It's all virtualized, so everything is still there. Yes, there is a BIOS that is virtualized in VMware, and it will start that process. We'll see that take part. Here it comes. All right, so now Windows will start to install here. And for the most part, this will take very little interaction from us. So what we'll do is we'll let this run and we will come back to this at a later time. For the most part, once you're in Windows, you'll select the license, you'll select the language, not license, you'll select the language. You'll maybe be asked to enter in a few things, but for the most part, when it comes to the express install or the quick install, everything is done pretty much automated at this point in time, depending on your computer's processor, the speed of your drive, and the amount of RAM you have. For the host OS itself, that's the laptop desktop, it could take a little bit of time or it could take several hours depending on. So we'll let that go and we will move on to our next video, which will be workstation itself, VMware Workstation, not player, but workstation.